Hello, Jay.
Hey, buddy.
How are you?
You know, man, if I were any better, I'd be bent over a craps table right now watching my best friend pass 5 times in a row.
Well, there were five passes there. I will tell you more. I passed more times than I ever have on a craps table.
Yeah.
You and me, Jay. We were there. We had a good weekend.
No, it was a great weekend, just all the way around. I miss seeing you, and it's just so good to spend time with you.
Oh, it was so much fun. My buddy's sitting here with me drinking that cold beer. He just brought me over it's one of those welcome to Tennessee signs. And right underneath it says, "Welcome to Tennessee. Please spay and neuter your leftist relatives." That's pretty good.
That boy, Ken.
That's a pretty good one.
Ken.
That's a pretty good one. Well, Jay, before we get away from it, thank you so much for being my friend, and thank you so much for the enjoyable weekend. It was a lot of fun. Now, I'm going to let you tell. I tried to tell my version of this story. Before we get into all of you with legal questions, get them in here. 615-737-9986. Get them on the super text line. Get on the phone lines. We can take your calls, and we will do so. But, Jay, while they line up those legal questions, I want you to give your version of the story of how we got ourselves a caddy on the golf course while playing golf.
8 o'clock Saturday morning, pretty early, and we're going out the first tee. And out of the corner of my eye, I see some motion out in the middle of the golf course, and I thought it was maybe a deer. It was pretty big, and it was at a good distance, And so, whoa, what was that? And you said, I think it was a dog. Oh, okay. And then so we go on a little bit, and sure enough, there's this what appears to be a free-range dog wandering the golf course, although we later saw him following a guy in a cart who works there at the golf course. So I suspect it was bring your dog to work day. I think's what happened. And so we saw him for several holes, and he was going full speed. He looked like a pit bull, I think, or maybe a mix. And then he, one hole, he's kind of up around us, and we're over putting or whatever, and start walking over to the golf cart. He's sitting in the golf cart.
Just sitting there.
And that was not the first time he's done that, man.
No.
Because he knew it. He knew exactly where to sit. He took the middle seat, not shotgun. He was in the middle. And then we just took off right, and he said, okay, that's good. Because it was hot, and then he was panting. When you get up to hit a ball.
He stopped panting.
Stopped panting.
It's like somebody pulled out the quiet please sign.
Yeah, hush, y'all. That's what they do at the golf course. So he rode with us a couple of holes, and then he said, thanks, guys, enjoyed it, and off he went.
I was shocked. The most shocking part for me, the most shocking thing was when we got up to hit the ball, and you addressed the ball, and he was, and then stop. And then you hit the ball, and then you hit the ball, and then he started right back. I've never seen anything like it. And
it was great.
But the fact that he got in the golf cart, and I thought, well, we walk over here. When we get in, he'll get out. Nope. He was like, no, I'm riding with you fellers.
No, he knew it was shady in there. It was hot. It was a hot, steamy morning. He knew exactly what he was doing.
That's so good.
My guess is we probably was his Uber to the best nearby watering hole.
I think so.
And so, he's figured out how to take Ubers for free.
For nothing. He's living the life, though, man. He is living the life. Good for him.
He was a happy dog.
Well, Jay, I'm so happy to have you on because I made a prediction at the beginning of this radio show, and I hope you weren't listening because I don't want to put my thumb on the scale. But my prediction is that you don't like Harvard that much. That's my prediction. But before,
now, what would make you think that?
Well, in order to explain why this is my theory, I have a question for you, Jay.
Okay.
Jay, where did you go to law school?
Yale.
Jay, where did you go to law school?
Ken, that will always be fun.
Absolutely.
That's
always.
You and I, Hey, we might be on our deathbeds, Jay. We might be the only people on planet Earth that still thinks that's funny. But I will always think that is funny.
Always be funny.
So Harvard's in a little bit of an interesting pickle. Now, there's a lot of lawyers over there at Harvard, so there's a lot of lawsuits that are going to come out of this thing. But without leading the witness in any form or fashion, I mean, now they're saying that, look, if y'all don't want to help us out, y'all take a lot of federal money over there at Harvard. You take a lot of government money, and you know what? You enjoy the benefit of the student visa program at Harvard, and if you don't want to abide by some of the rules, then we'll just pull your ability to have a student visa program. What are your thoughts, Jay?
Well, that's already been enjoined. The judge enjoined that right away, and it doesn't surprise me. There are times when you can paint with broad brushes, and there are times that you have to use a more precise instrument. Mm-hmm. And I don't think this is a time I don't think the courts will let this kind of broad brush approach to student visas here. I don't think so. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's already been stayed. I think it'll be stayed until there's a final decision, because the government is going to have a really difficult time to prove irreparable harm. A lot of I try not to get too technical when I'm on with you, but this is something I think everybody needs to know. The way these things are going, the president will do something. Well, then the liberals or whoever run to court and try to stop it immediately. I mean, like immediately, within 2 days. Mm-hmm. And they're really just asking to stop it while the lawsuit is going on. That's the way it works out. That's what they call temporary restraining orders. And then they grow into preliminary injunctions. But all we're really fighting about is what is the circumstances going to be while the lawsuit is pending. And that may take years, literally may take years.
Right.
And one of the key factors, one of the main factors is, well, can you win your lawsuit? You got to be able to show that you got a pretty good chance of winning. And then the second is there will be irreparable harm if you don't stop it. There's something will happen that can't be undone, that money can't make right. And, here they're saying, well, 6,000 students are going to have to leave the country. And there's no way to make that whole. Mm-hmm. And so, there's harm there. There's no question about that. So now the government has to come in and say, well, but the harm to the government is going to be greater, man. And, these aren't criminals. These aren't rapists. These aren't gang bangers. Yeah. It's very different from this other group of people. And so that I don't think they can credibly claim public safety is going to be the irreparable harm. We're going to be leaving a lot of dangerous people in this country if we're going to do this. So I think that it's going to get put on hold until this lawsuit is eventually decided. There's a lot of facts and evidence that's got to come out that I don't know right now. But I would say this. I would say that it is a very heavy lift for the administration to pick out one university, even a crappy one like Harvard, and say that you can't have anybody come into your school on student visas. There's no case-by-case thing. We just don't like the way you run your school. Therefore, we're not going to issue any student visas to anybody that's going to Harvard. That's a very heavy lift. Frankly, I will be surprised if the government wins that way.
Well, and I thought, I was open to the possibility of you saying that because I don't believe, Jay, that I think they're just using this as another way to get Harvard back into compliance with what they think Harvard ought to be doing, right?
It's the art of the deal, man.
Right, just something else on the negotiation table. Say, look,
it's exactly, and that's the way he does that. I told you back, when he ran first time, I didn't know anything about him, really didn't like him. I read his book and came away with a much better understanding about it. And his style of negotiating is, there's nothing unique about it. But let's say that you have something I want, and you don't want to sell it. Well, then I say, well, man, I'll give you $1 million. Ooh.
It's a lot of money.
So now I've got your attention. You start way out, and then you work your way back in. You hit China with tariffs of 150%, and then you settle at 20. That's his style of negotiating. You start way out here and you hit them with something really. Who was that great philosopher, Mike Tyson? Is that his name, Mike?
I think that's right. I think
Mike Tyson. That great philosopher, Mike Tyson, said, "Everybody has a plan until you get punched in the nose."
Well, that's right.
Well, so Trump begins his negotiations by punching the other guy in the nose.
Well, and he does, to use a different analogy, and it's really just another example of what you're saying. It's like you and I are neighbors, and you really don't like a tree that's in my yard that is that's coming over on your side, right? And you're like, Matt, you need to cut that tree down. I was like, well, I don't want to cut that tree down. And you're like, you need to cut that tree down. And I say, well, Jay, I have no interest in cutting my tree down. And you say, well, that's fine, but I'm thinking about putting up some floodlights. And I'm pretty sure these floodlights are going to be pointing directly toward your backyard. Right. And I'm like, hold on a second. Oh, you're putting up floodlights. All right, like you have no real interest, but you throw the floodlights out. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are you talking about floodlights for? I'm going to put up some floodlights.
I got to block that tree out.
Yeah, I got to block the tree out.
If that tree wasn't there, I wouldn't need the floodlights.
Yeah, but you know what? I might rethink those floodlights if you're willing to work with me on that tree deal. And you kind of and I feel like that's what he does, and in some cases does very well. Is tries to, and that's what he's trying to do with tariffs. It's a very similar in nature to what he's trying to do with tariffs.
No question about it.
So that's interesting that and I think you're right in this, and I don't think a lot of people will necessarily like hearing it, but it is a fact that some of these students at Harvard, they ain't got nothing to do with any of this politics, right? They're just trying to go to school. They're just trying to go to school.
Except they are Harvard, but you're right. That's the only knock against them.
Right. Yeah, it's a pretty big one, but it's the only one. Jay St. Clair is with us on Super Talk 99.7 WT, and it is Fri-Jay. We're real close, real tight against the top of the hour. I think I have time. I don't have time for a call, but I think I have time for a quick question for Jay. Let's see. Jay has a little echo. I'm working on that echo. Y'all, so don't worry about that. I understand that there's some feedback. There's an echo somewhere. I'm just going to make Kirby turn the PA off, and that'll solve that. And it's not Kirby's fault. I'm not blaming old Curb. I'm just telling you that I get it, and I apologize for it. By the way, Ann says, tell Jay I just wanted to say hi. I hope you will tell me hi back. And if you don't, my feelings are hurt. So,
well, hey, Ann. Happy Friday, Ann. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Ann. There you go. Harriet comes to us next out of Lebanon. And, Harriet, I thank you for holding. You are on with our man, Jay St. Clair.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for taking the call.
Mm-hmm.
My question, Mr. St. Clair, is my daughter passed away at 57, left her home in her will to her daughter, who is only was 19 at the time. I'm 76, and I had to take a full-time job. Luckily, I found one to try to keep things up because my granddaughter was in college. My question is, there's something about putting a house in her name that is stopping me. I have the documents to do it, but someone said I should probably do it and put it in a trust or what do you call the person that's the overseer of an estate or
the administrator of the estate.
I don't know kind of what to
executor of the estate. So it's in a will. Does she leave everything to her daughter?
Yes. She left the will. We got all that handled. I just think that she needs to put
did it go through probate?
Nope.
So that's, the first thing you got to do is get it in her name. And the only way you can do that
I've got the paperwork to do that. So the attorney here in Lebanon, bless his heart, we waited a year. There was nobody filed anything against it. And we just called in 2 people that knew my daughter's wishes.
Oh, okay.
And
so that's really been through probate. Yeah. And so you're wanting to put it in a trust. And I can understand why.
Once it goes in her name.
Yeah, because I get that, because 19-year-olds aren't really that financially responsible. Harriet, I think that's a great idea. I think how much is the house worth?
There's probably 200,000 equity.
And then what is there other money? How much total money did she inherit?
Really no money, just the house.
Yeah, just the house. Well, but for $200,000 for a 19-year-old, I think a trust is a good idea. And what I would do is talk to the same lawyer that talked to you about getting the house in her name, and ask him if he handles trust. And what that would do, she would be the sole beneficiary of the trust, but she can't just go blow that money. She can't go to Las Vegas and spend $200,000. She can't sell the house.
I worry more about her getting in some kind of a car accident where she's at fault and somebody sues her for the house.
Well, I don't know that I don't know that a trust helps you there. She just needs to make sure she carries good insurance.
Mm-hmm.
If your fear is that she's going to do something that ends up with her being sued, you just make sure she's got really good insurance.
Okay.
Is she
My
responsible?
last question.
Yeah, is she responsible enough to handle that at 19 years old here? Are you comfortable with that?
No.
Yeah, well, that's what's gnawing at me here. I would talk to the lawyer that helped you get the house in her name and say, look, I really think what's in everybody's best interest is let's put this in a trust. And it won't cost that much. It should just be a couple $1,000s. And then that way she won't blow the money. She can't blow it.
I found a thing online where you can buy the blank paperwork. Would that be legal if I
Well, I
downloaded it?
mean, yes, you could try to set your own trust area, but here's what I have to say about that. They are very technical, they're counterintuitive. It is real easy to do it wrong. And I just think that's one of those things where you're better off spending a couple of $1,000s and get a lawyer to draft it for you. But yes, you can do it online. You can.
Thank you for taking my call.
I wouldn't.
Of course,
do it.
Harriet.
I wouldn't do it here.
Yeah. Thank you, Harriet, and great advice from Jay St. Clair. Our next caller is Greg, who is on the road with a question for Jay. Hello, Greg.
Hello, Jay.
Hey, Greg.
My question is, where does one go to get a detailed copy of one's criminal record?
Detailed copy of criminal record. Huh.
Probably the best way to do that. There's a couple of ways, but call companies that do background checks. That's probably going to be the most accurate way to do it. You can actually go online. There's all these people online. I can go online right now and try to get my criminal record. You got to pay a fee for it, but they're not very accurate. So I don't think I would do that. I would go to a company that does that for a living, a background check company, and you can just Google it, and they're everywhere. They're good, reputable companies. Fortune 500 companies use them to do background checks on applicants, and just tell them that you want to do a background check on yourself, and I guarantee you they'll pay your money. They'll take your money, and they'll do that for you. That's the best way to get it because it gets all jurisdictions. You could try to go do it yourself, but man, I mean, so you're just not set up to do that. You have to go to every court system in the country. Call a company that does background checks. Tell them you want a background check on yourself.
Okay. All right, Jay. Thank you.
Way to go, Greg.
My pleasure, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
If we have the time, I know I'd rather take callers too, but I'm ready on that smoking question.
Well, I'm ready to ask, and we've got one more coming up. But the smoking question. Hold on, let me get back to my page.
Well, let's go. It's your show, but I love callers.
No. Well, we're setting one up right now, but we got a little bit of time before we get all of that set up. How is throwing? 0230 wants to know, is throwing a cigarette butt out of your truck window considered littering?
I love my job. I love my job, man. But one of the frustrating things about my job is rarely do I get to hear the whole story. I don't know everything, even about even lawsuits that I handled for years.
Right.
I never really held. So we don't know the whole story here, and I'm dying to know. I have two guesses. One is this guy got a ticket for littering, for throwing a cigarette butt out. That's probably the most common or the most likely thing. But here's the other one. And you will understand how I prove it. It's either that he got a ticket for throwing a cigarette butt out of his truck, or that his spouse hates that he smokes, or his, let's say, significant other hates that he smokes and hates that he throws the butts out the window. And every time he does it, she says to him,
"That's littering."
Oh, that's littering. You know, you
littering.
get a ticket for that. And I'd say there's at least a 37% chance that this is why he's asking that question. So the answer is yes, that is littering. I'm guessing this is in Tennessee. I'm looking right now at Tennessee Code Section 39-14-501. And the definition of litter is garbage, refuse, rubbish, and all other waste materials, including tobacco products.
Wow.
They specifically, and frankly, I would say tobacco products includes a big old cut of beech nut.
Yeah, a wad of chewing tobacco.
If you spit that out your window, that's littering. So, Ken, you need to keep you a little red daisy cup in your truck.
That's right.
Don't spit it out the window.
There you go. That's good stuff. How long, Jeremiah wants to know, how long can you I'm confused by the nature of the question. How long can you sue against a grocery store for civil rights violations? Okay, so this is a
my guess is a statute of limitations issue. He's probably asking how long
does
do
he
I have to file a lawsuit against a store. I'm trying to figure out what kind of lawsuit that. The sooner the better. It depends on exactly what kind of claim you would file, but probably 2 years. So the sooner the better.
So, but there is a pretty fairly short narrow window, ramp.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
But I
Jake,
don't know the exact claim to know the exact time period.
I got you. All right. Let's see here. I believe we got Scott, who is in Hendersonville, and Scott has a question for Jay. Scott, you're on with Jay St. Clair.
Hey, Jay, quick question for you. If a person were to be like in their 60s or say even 70s and decide to do Ancestry.com or one of those, genetic things, and they found out that they had a grown offspring, that's 30, 40 years old, is there a statute of limitations on financial responsibility for that, like child support?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if they're 40 years old, you don't have to pay child support. Child support ends at majority, once they reach an adult. So, no, you don't have to. Your friend does not have to worry about that. If your friend finds out that he's got an adult child that he never knew about, he will not owe that child or anybody else any money.
I understand. Well, my buddy will be very relieved.
Hey,
good to talk to you, Scott.
Scott, thank you, and tell your buddy to listen to the Matt Murphy Show next time he's around. Okay?
You got it, brother.
All right, man. I appreciate it. I think we can get Garrett in here out of Murfreesboro. Garrett has some advice for us on the cigarette front. Garrett, what do you got?
Well, have you guys ever heard of field stripping a cigarette butt?
I have.
That is a military term. I was in the Army a long time ago, fall of '69, in basic training. When we finished a cigarette, light them up, you got them, put them out. You had to take you took what's left of it, you tear the paper off and shred it tinily. You spread the tobacco out all over the place. You take the filter and you take it apart. into little pieces, and you spread that around to where there's nothing left of the butt, and it's called field stripping a cigarette butt.
So the bad guys can't trail you.
Yeah.
They can't track you by your cigarette butts.
And so the drill sergeants won't make you drop and do 40.
Well,
so you don't litter. It doesn't have anything to do with the Viet Cong. It's not about the Viet Cong finding you. It's about your DI making you do 40 push-ups out in the rice paddy.
Right, and let me tell you, and I'm 76, and when you watch a movie when they're nose to nose with you, that is a real thing.
Wow.
I can't hear you.
And so just that guy needs to just field strip his cigarette butts and not worry about it.
Well, get his personal drill sergeant office behind.
Thank you, Garrett. I love that, Garrett.
Right.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, Jay, I'll tell you this quick story. I don't know that I've ever told you this story, but when I was in college in the theater program, there was an older guy that was in the theater program with us by the name of Robert Roller. And Robert was a Vietnam War veteran. And he went back to school, specifically wanted to get into the theater department, and then we eventually found out that there was a lot of therapy going on for Robert, because Robert had been in combat and he had seen a lot of bad things. And we were smoking one day outside of the theater, and I saw Robert field stripping his cigarette. And I'd never seen that before. I just
by habit. Just by habit.
General habit. And I said, Robert, what are you doing? And he paused, and he looked at me, and he said, cigarette butt saved my life one time. And I said, say again? And he said, cigarette butt saved my life. And this guy didn't talk very much. He told the story of being in the jungle, in the middle of the jungle, and walking through the jungle and coming up on 3 cigarette butts laying on the ground. And he said he looked up, and about 40 feet in the tree was Viet Cong asleep. With and he said if those cigarette butts and what happened next, y'all can kind of figure it out. But he said if those cigarette butts hadn't have been down there, he wouldn't have seen that guy in that tree. And if he'd have walked through that area, odds are he would have woken up and Robert Roller would not be there. And I was like, wow,
what an amazing story.
I mean, that's incredible. I said, well, you field strip away, brother, because I get it. I get it. Jay, sadly, we are out of time. I hope you have a good weekend, my friend.
Thank you, brother. Same to you. Be safe.
You know I love being with you on the weekends. You know I love talking to you on Fri-Jays, and we'll do it again next week.
Thank you, brother.
All right.